Hello. Today, I think I'm going to provide a fairly short video talking about attention and difficulties with directing and maintaining our attention on things by choice. One thing I will find myself worrying about at the moment is whether or not I'm speaking too softly. I don't know. I will find out after I finish the video, and I'll go back and check. So, I'm going to set that to the side and direct my attention back to what I wanted to talk about. So we often notice and focus on distraction or inattention as if it is a problem that needs to be solved. And perhaps it is. It certainly can produce a lot of problematic effects for us. It can interfere with learning. It can interfere with work that we're trying to do or tasks, even just around the house. It can make it harder to keep things mentally organized, to schedule things, or see, it's gone again. Inattention can have a lot of effect just in how we go about our day-to-day business and whether or not we can achieve our personal goals, the things that matter to us. Inattention can also have pretty significant effects socially. If other people feel like we aren't paying attention to them, or if our attention wanders and we indeed forget what they were telling us, they may feel rather upset with us. So it can affect our social relationships. We tend to judge ourselves for it. Oftentimes, if we get distracted or we lose track of things, part of our mind will come back and say, I'm irresponsible, or why couldn't I do better than that? I should do better. And so we start coming up with lots of different ways to criticize ourselves, which effectively turn inattention into a bigger problem. If we can pull away from that a little bit and just look at okay, inattention itself, I would like to be able to focus on things by choice. All the other stuff doesn't really seem to help us. We're already motivated to want to pay attention to and keep our attention focused on things. So criticizing ourselves doesn't do a lot of good, though we've likely heard it from other people. And so naturally we tend to do the same thing. And we tend to anticipate these terrible outcomes. So we might say oh, I become distracted. Well, so there's distraction, and then that will prevent me from being on time. So that becomes a problem. And if I'm not on time, then I might lose my job. And if I lose my job, then I need money to be able to live. So there's money, and then that can tie into food, shelter, the essentials, as well as fun, the things that we enjoy, which often require money too. So we start to tie a whole bunch of things together. It's a nice diagram, isn't it? And so we tie all these things together, and what starts off as just one little thing becomes a lot of things. And when we see a lot of things, naturally we tend to feel overwhelmed, and our brain says, oh, I should avoid that, and it gets even harder to stay focused on it. So let's take all of that, set it to the side too. It's not that it isn't real, it's not that it isn't important, it's just not helping us a whole lot right now. So we set it to the side and say, I want to be able to direct my attention to where I want it to be, and I want to be able to keep it there for as long as I want it. And my mind is naturally going to wander. It's going to drift. I will have many other thoughts that come into my mind, such as even as I stumbled on what I was saying there, part of my mind says, oh, I stumbled. Should I do something about that? Should I cut that out of the video? I don't know how to edit, so that won't happen. But all kinds of things might come into my mind, and I can recognize that and return my attention back to where I wanted it to be, just by choice. It may not stay for long. That's not the point. We want to be able to move our attention by choice and notice when our mind does what our minds will naturally do, which is to wander, to drift, to consider things. It's not being a bad brain for doing that. We just want to be able to bring our attention back to what we choose. So, what I want to suggest This video is already going a bit longer than I originally intended, but that's fine. So what I want to suggest is the idea of practicing directing attention and noticing inattention, much like we would do, say, with push-ups. Think of them as mental push-ups. So I'll walk you through the steps. They're not formal steps, they're just things that I think describe it pretty well. So here's the idea. You want to practice. Set aside 5 to 10 minutes each day if you can to practice. Now 5 to 10 minutes every day can actually seem like quite a bit. So you try to find a place where you can fit it into your day and say, okay, I'm just going to practice for a little bit every day and I'll be fine. And I recommend starting with maybe just 5 minutes. If inattention is a hard thing to wrestle with normally for you, then start with 5 minutes. There's no need to go all the way up to 10 minutes. That'd be like saying, I want to be able to run 5 miles, so I'm going to start with 5 miles. Probably not a good idea. So starting with like maybe just 5 minutes, and then pick something mundane that you can focus on. Something that's not terribly interesting, because you're going to be practicing focusing by choice. We're not going to try to rig it for ourselves to make it any easier or more difficult than it needs to be. We pick something pretty simple, pretty mundane, and that you have easy access to. Maybe, for example, your foot. So you can focus your attention on your foot and what you can feel. While doing that, the task is to try to notice each time your attention wanders. Not to criticize it for doing that, just to notice it each time. It's like, oh, yeah, my attention wandered again. Okay, well, I noticed it wandered, and now I can return my attention to my foot again. A simple thing, like a push-up, except in this case, you notice that your attention has wandered, and in response, you just direct it back. You're telling your brain what to do, rather than telling your brain what to not do. We get a lot of information about what we should not do, but that doesn't help us as much as knowing what to do. So we want to try to focus on developing the ability to do something by choice. We're not going to reduce inattention. We're not going to punish our brains for wandering. What we're going to try to do instead is to notice when our mind wanders, notice when our attention has shifted, and by choice, return it back to something. Doesn't really matter what it is, because you're going to use the same skill for anything. If you need to notice your foot, you'll use it for that. If you need to use it to fix a sandwich, you're going to do that. It doesn't really matter. So each time your attention wanders, you notice or recognize it as done that and redirect it by choice back to the mundane, simple thing like your foot. So it's likely to be hard to do. You're likely to notice that your attention wanders often. And you might notice that your brain tends to become kind of critical, and we won't really do anything about that either. We don't need to fight our brain from being critical. We just don't have to give it a lot of attention. Kind of a funny choice of words. We don't have to really indulge our brain when it's being critical. It's not being especially helpful, so we just say like, okay, well, you're not wrong, my attention did wander, and I'm going to go back to paying attention by choice again, rather than getting all caught up in the fact that my attention wandered. All right, so that's it. It ended up being a lot longer video than I thought it was going to be, but hopefully it will be useful. And if you have any questions or thoughts, then I think that there are ways to reach me through the platforms where I will post the video. And I invite you to do that. I enjoy questions, and so I don't mind that at all. All right, take care.